be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. O gracious Heavenly Father, today, Creator, we ask that you look down upon us. Help us to follow your laws, both written and unwritten, as we honor the creation that you've given us, as well as, most of all, our people, as the people that are stewards of all the things that are on this earth. Dear God, heal us from our shortcomings, that our lands and our people might be healed. And today, give us the wisdom to see the way through this wilderness, that we know that on the other end you will deliver us. We give you all the praise and all the glory in your Son's wonderful name, Jesus. Amen.
Mm. Lim.
Thank you. Okay, Jeannie, I guess we could do a roll call of the board.
Custis Wisdom, everyone. Leonard Forsman, President.
Present.
Mel Sheldon, Jr., First Vice President.
Roger.
Delno Saluskin, Second Vice President. John George, Third Vice President. Jeannie Louie, Secretary, here. Sharon Gowdy, Treasurer. Sharon.
Oops, here. I was on mute.
Taylor Alvick, Assistant Secretary.
I'm here.
Okay. All right. With that, Mr. President, we do have 5 members present. It makes a quorum.
Oh, great. Thank you. Just want to thank everybody for getting together today. And as we move forward, we've been very busy. I know everybody's very busy, not only with your what you have to do at home, but also what we're facing on a local, state, and federal arena challenges that we have there. So really appreciate everybody's hard work. Here in Suquamish, is like a lot of other places, our government operations are still, I should just say our government building is closed. I always want to say our government operations are closed, but it really isn't the case. A lot of people are still working from home, but our offices are closed. But we do have some folks that are not able to work unless they can get into the office, but a lot of us are working from home. So a lot of us, I've seen a lot of people's dens and offices here, and everybody's got a different approach, and I really appreciate that. It's like Kevin might have a different viewpoint and no Ravens gear today, so hands up to you. I hope you did well in the draft. Okay. So anyway, here we go. Let's go ahead and get started. I'll turn it over to Terry for our first agenda item. Are you there, Terry?
Yes, speaking with my mic muted. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being with us this morning, and we'll go to our legislative update or update from Brian Gunn. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, Terry. I'll make this pretty quick. I've got to jump off here in about 15 minutes, if not less, but I'll just run through some things fairly quickly. I think they'll be covered in more detail by some other folks later on the agenda. But last Friday, Congress cleared and the president passed or signed into law this what's being called this COVID 3.5 package. It was a series of fixes really to the SBA program, specifically and adding money to the Paycheck Protection Program that's gotten a lot of discussion. Sort of contemporaneous with that being signed, SBA issued some new interim guidance. I think it's maybe the 3rd or 4th round of interim guidance that they've issued, but they did clarify that gaming related entities would be eligible for the PPP program, which is something that I think folks have been working on pretty diligently since the CARES Act passed. So that was resolved. There still are some other questions about SBA eligibility, specific kind of fact patterns that folks were talking about on the NFOA call just a bit ago. I reserve those maybe for the SBA or for Sean when he's on later. But there still are some questions, but I think the big issue about the tribal gaming related enterprises was addressed last week. This COVID 3.5 package also had added new significant resources on the healthcare side. I think Laura will probably talk about those in a little bit more detail. But just a lot of a lot of things kind of in a pretty discrete package. Separately from that, we're hearing discussions are ongoing about some broader relief package that Congress presumably or will likely take up at some point once there's something close to an agreement. You probably heard on the news that the Senate Majority Leader has made statements about providing additional relief for state and local governments, and some broad statements that he didn't think that it was appropriate to be bailing out state and local governments that have mismanaged their financial situation or haven't contributed to their pension funds. So I think how that plays out, we'll have to see, but I suspect that there'll be some relief for state, local, and tribal governments and some whatever the iteration of the COVID-4 package ends up being. And I guess, the other news was obviously the court decision on Monday in the lawsuit relating to the ANCs. I know there's folks on this call who are parties to that who can speak to that, but a pretty thorough 34-page order that granted the plaintiff's motion for a preliminary injunction. And it looks like the judge is staying involved in the case and has asked for the parties to file a status report this Friday about sort of where things stand and what what folks' the parties' thoughts are going forward. But again, I'll let other folks speak to that. But Terry, that's all I've got. I know you have a tight agenda, so I figured I'd stop it there.
Thanks, Brian. Any questions for Brian? Okay. Thanks, Brian. We always appreciate you being on with us.
Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, Brad, and good job on the work that you've done on the eligibility issues under the CARES Act.
Yeah, a lot of people are working on those. So yeah, kind of a group effort by everybody, just because it obviously affects so many tribal businesses and tribal governments. So, but no, appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, next up we have Laura Platero from the Health Board, Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board. Laura, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. I'm not really in a tropical place. It would be nice though. We had an exercise or a check-in this morning. We had to put our sort of dream place we want to be right now, and I picked Tahiti. Anyway, good morning, everyone. So let me just pull up my slide set here. See if I can do this. I don't know if I'm maybe I'll do this. Hold on, let me try one more time. I don't know, Terry, do you have to transfer over the ability for me to use share my screen?
I didn't think so, but, and I don't know how to do, oh, wait.
Okay. It doesn't look like it's working. I can just jump in. I know there's a lot to cover.
Okay.
I can actually do it without showing my slides. Show slides. Let's see. So right now, the Northwest Portland Area Health Board continues its surveillance of the cases in the Portland area, and we're working closely with the IHS area office. We also have agreements in Washington and Oregon, as I mentioned before, to access to the Essence data system, which allows us to also obtain information on emergency rooms and admissions of American Indians related to COVID or COVID-related type illnesses. So just wanted to share that as a side note. In terms of the numbers that we know now, we know that for Portland area, there are 120 American Indians, Alaska Natives with COVID-19. And in terms of the state breakdown, we have 103 in Washington, 14 in Oregon, and 3 in Idaho. And overall, across the country, there are about 3,000 cases. It's 2,973. The majority of those cases are on Navajo, with 1,880 there. We have the 5th highest number of cases. So it's Navajo, Albuquerque, Phoenix, Oklahoma, then Portland area in terms of number of cases. And the data is available on IHS's website, right on the front page. So just wanted to share that in case you want to access that. The data that I just shared includes data from 28 tribes. We're still trying to get all tribes to report this information. So of course it doesn't reflect what is actually going on just because we're not getting all of the tribes reporting. So let me see what else I can say. The other thing that was in my slides that I just wanted to share is IHS is also tracking ITUs, IHS Tribal and Urban Indian Facilities, PPE, just to see what their current supply is. And so we have, of the 28 tribes that I just mentioned, we have 6 with an adequate supply, 14 with a limited supply of 1 to 3 months. And then we have 2 with inadequate and 2 with critical amount. And this gets reported, so it's every day we actually try to ask, we do ask our clinics to report this data every day. So things, these numbers are always changing. And then in terms of ITU test kits that are available now, just wanted to share that the tribes are reporting an adequate supply of 3 months or more. Only 4 are reporting, an adequate supply. And then in terms of limited, a 1 to 3 month supply, 6 tribes are reporting that, and then inadequate, 7, and then no kits available, 3 of the 28 reporting. So, I mean, this information is really helpful for advocacy. And so we, I will see if I can get our staff to reach out again to some of the tribes that haven't been providing information so that we have a more comprehensive picture of what's going on in our area. Okay, and Terry, I will send the slides to you too, so you have them. So the survey is available on our website. So we really, again, encourage all of our tribes to provide that data to us. And then I know Brian had mentioned that the CARES Act package was signed into law last week. So just a few highlights from that I want to share. So most of the funding was for the small business program, but there was or is funding for healthcare providers, $100 billion for lost revenue. And then there's also funding $25 billion for testing capacity. Of that amount, $700 million is going to tribes, tribal organizations, and urban Indian organizations. And language was put in there to basically state in coordination with IHS. So we are hopeful that that will mean the funds will be transferred more directly, either through interagency agreements or a more streamlined process will be put in place, because, you know, as we know, that's been a big issue. The funds just aren't getting to our tribes. And we are also in the process of advocating for some of the items that we partnered with in our advocacy with the national and regional organizations in terms of, and there were several items that we're asking for, and I won't go over the full list. I'll highlight the ones that are most important for our area. Because we don't have hospitals in our area, purchase and referred care will be really critical. So we are asking our tribes to share information as to whether or not the amount of funding they've received for COVID-19 is sufficient. I think the issue right now is with the tribes we do know that have had a lot of cases, they have not had hospitalizations yet. So over time, we do know that tribes will be expending those funds, but they're not quite there yet. So we're trying to get the funds now, but we don't really have the data yet to support that. So if any of your tribes have been spending any of those funds on any positive cases, that would be helpful to know, and how far those dollars are stretching. We also are in the process of, we sent a survey out to collect information on lost third-party reimbursements. And so there is a proposal in this next, the CARES 2 package, I guess that's what it's being called, for a relief fund for IHS and tribal programs. The ask is 1.7 billion. And so we've been collecting some of that data because we have, from our congressional representatives or their staff, they're basically asking for that detail. They want the data to back up the requests that we're making. So the data in terms of what is being lost at our clinics in terms of third-party revenue is really, really critical. So we should have a pretty good idea, hopefully, if we can get everyone to report on what those losses are for our area. And I also, let's see, just to highlight a few things in that, there's money for sanitation facilities and construction and maintenance improvement requests. And then one big item for our area was expanding telehealth capacity and access in Indian country. We know some of our areas don't have the infrastructure for telehealth. And then one of the big items I know that was requested by tribes in our area was direct access to the strategic national stockpile. And then there's several other just legislative fixes that are in the request. These are some of the bigger ones that we really are pushing for, and just wanted to share those with you. And then in terms of some of the work we're doing with our tribes right now, we have had many requests for technical assistance in terms of tribes planning on reopening their businesses, their enterprises. And so generally, we have come up with some public health sort of guidelines for what we think needs to be in place. And we actually had an ECHO webinar session on Monday, and that was recorded. And we had medical experts and public health experts on it, basically providing some sort of technical public health information to those who participated in terms of what should be in place before reopening. I did learn this morning, and I haven't looked at it yet, that CDC has posted some serology surveillance strategies guidance. So that's like related to the antibodies tests and what should be in place. I don't know yet what that says. I haven't received a report back from our staff, but I just wanted to share that that's some new guidance that's available. And there is an issue with the antibodies tests, and we have heard that from our Dr. Weiser, who's a medical epidemiologist who works with us at the health board. I mean, he's officially employed by IHS, but he sits at our office. Basically right now, the tests that are available, what he said is we don't know exactly what it means, the test results mean, other than that, it's just unclear what the results mean. The main thing that's unknown in terms of what he has shared is we don't know if, for example, a positive antibody test, meaning the person did have COVID-19, means that they're immune. That we don't know because there have been some cases of reinfection. So there's a lot unknown about the antibody test, but maybe the CDC guidance provides additional information. So just wanted to share that, and I would encourage you maybe to check out our recorded webinar on this, and this will be something we'll be focused on, and like I said, we're providing TA and guidance to tribes who request it. And we also are in the process of building our capacity for contact tracing and working with tribes on developing their infrastructure for it. We have some staff who are trained and have been trained and are just doing it for a while, but we are building our capacity to have a larger pool of staff available. And that's all I have, Terry.
Do we have any questions for Laura?
Yes, Leonard here. I had a question regarding, and I know it's probably going to be, you already said this is hard to answer, and I don't think anybody has an answer, but I think that a lot of the confusion is that a lot of tribal leaders are trying to get economies open, trying to get their back to business, and it's almost like there's some folks that I'm going to wait till there's a vaccine before I leave the house, and then there's other people say I don't understand why we're not open. So the range is quite large in that respect. But I was on a call with our county leaders. There's talk about how the testing initiative in our state, in Washington, at least their feeling is this, because of the lack of a federal coordination, it's free market, and there's labs that charge $200, there's labs that charge $50. It's all over the place, and some labs are getting overwhelmed because they're the lab that everybody sends everything to the University of Washington, and then the other labs are going, well, we've got capacity. So there's no coordinated approach, and I know that we're innovative here in Indian country. I don't know if we can fix this, but I know that that's been kind of my frustration, is that it doesn't seem like anybody really understands what a good testing strategy looks like, and I just wondered if there's a role for the tribes to play in that.
Thank you. That's a question I can actually bring back and talk to Dr. Weiser and some of our EPI staff, and maybe come back to you with a response, or maybe even bring one of them on the call with me to talk about what is being done and how tribes are involved in developing testing strategies, or if there's one that they've seen that works. Would that be helpful?
Yes, that would be. And then one other question is this: you said there's a recorded webinar. Is that on your website?
Yes, it is. And I can also, I'll make sure to post it in the chat box too, and send it to Terry so that she can circulate it to all of you. It was basically something like guidelines for non-essential businesses reopening, or something to that effect. Okay.
Great.
Any other questions? Thank you, Laura. We always appreciate you being with us.
You're welcome.
Okay, and next up today with us, we have SBA. Sean Pensino is with us from Tribal Affairs, as is Carrie Hurd from the Seattle District Office. Sean, go ahead. Thanks for being with us today.
Good morning and good afternoon. I want to thank ATNI for inviting the SBA on today's conference call. Again, I'm Sean Pensino, and I currently serve as the Assistant Administrator for the Office of Native American Affairs at SBA. Been in this position since October of 2018. Prior to that, I worked for the Bureau of Indian Affairs as a Public Affairs Specialist. And prior to that, I worked for the National American Indian Housing Council. And while I was at the National American Indian Housing Council, ATNI support in various Indian housing priorities was critical. And I applaud all the work that ATNI does on behalf of Indian country. Thank you very much. I know we've all been on many conference calls and webinars discussing what's going on the ground levels throughout tribal communities, as well as providing important input and solutions to those challenges during the current pandemic. Seems to be the new normal for the time being. We're adjusting. The SBA has been at the forefront of the economic relief efforts aimed at small businesses during the current pandemic. In fact, the SBA processed 14 years of loans in 2 weeks earlier this month. It has been an incredible challenge, and one that has many of our team working around the clock. Early April, the CARES Act stood up the Paycheck Protection Program with the Small Business Administration's current 7A loan program. The program was designed to keep businesses and workers employed amid the pandemic and the economic turndown. And the program provided 100% federally guaranteed loans to small businesses. Importantly, those loans could be forgiven if the borrowers maintain their payrolls during the crisis or restore them, those payrolls afterwards. Another important element of CARES was to expand the Small Business Administration's long-standing Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, EIDL. And that EIDL program has been created to assist small businesses, renters, homeowners that are located in regions affected by declared disasters, which all 50 states were. The economic downturn has had incredible impacts throughout Indian country on all levels. Very clear. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and that includes tens of thousands of small businesses throughout tribal communities having to close their doors during the pandemic. And those are the job creators that have been impacted and are in need of serious assistance. Backing up a little bit, the SBA and Treasury Department held a joint tribal consultation on April 14th to receive comments and input from tribal leaders on the Paycheck Protection Program. And that call, along with numerous letters from tribal leaders and many other stakeholders, has provided invaluable information related to the current relief efforts throughout Indian Country. Again, I applaud the hard work and support you all and many others throughout Indian countries have provided. In fact, that important dialogue did result in modifications to the guidance of PPP. Those changes over the course of a few weeks included no requirement for collateral, inclusion of local lenders, CDFIs, native CDFIs, and the ability for small businesses providing important jobs related to the Indian gaming industry to be eligible as well. The SBA cap access loans have historically been a challenge for Indian country to access. That's the 7A, the 504s, and the microloans. And many of us have been talking about that for a number of years and continue to talk about that today. The initial round of PPP for CARES approved nearly $350 billion in funds, and that funding ran out in about 2 weeks into the program. But late last week, Congress approved and the President signed into law legislation to replenish those funds, and that second round of PPP included an amount of $310 billion, of which there was a $60 billion set aside specifically for smaller lending institutions like credit unions, community banks, and that was a move to focus attention on lending institutions with fewer resources and could assist businesses that were unable to access the program in round one. That second round of PPP resumed accepting loan applications on Monday, the 27th at 10:30, and at about 3:30 on Monday, just 5 hours into that next round, the SBA had processed more than 100,000 loans by more than 4,000 lenders, and that unprecedented demand had slowed the E-Tran response times. We saw double the number of users accessing the system compared to any day during the initial PPP. And the SBA is actually working to ensure the system security and integrity while also continuing processing loan applications. Again, the SBA is working around the clock to help small businesses during these challenging times. The second round of funding marks about $670 billion allocated to PPP so far. We're encouraging lenders, all lenders, approved lenders, to process those loan applications that were previously submitted by eligible borrowers and to disperse funds expeditiously. Also, all eligible borrowers should work with an approved lender to apply. We also encourage borrowers to carefully review the PPP regulations and guidance and certifications required to obtain a loan. And I want to point out something very important here. The SBA has a number of resource partners that are on the ground in the communities throughout Indian country as well. And that's the Women Business Center, the Small Business Development Centers, the Veteran Business Outreach Center, and SCORE Mentoring Networks. These partners are vital in our work and our reach to many communities throughout the country. And if you want to get additional information on those resource partners, you visit sba.gov/local for those resources. I also want to encourage everybody to visit treasury.gov/cares and sba.gov for updated information as guidance changes on a regular basis. We had a couple of changes that came through late yesterday, so I encourage everybody to look at those frequently. And again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to participate in today's call, and thank you for everything you all do for Indian country. And I'll turn it back.
Thank you, Sean. Do we have are there any questions for Sean? How about you, Carrie? Do you have anything to add to that?
Thank you for the opportunity. As some of you know, I've been sitting in on the BIA Region 10 calls, and Sean did give you a lot of the data behind our numbers, so I won't repeat that. But what I do want to stress is that I had sent out a list of potential lenders to do lending in Indian country. We have some banks who are truly trying to work through some of the challenges. And as they try to work through eligibility, you know, we have removed a lot of the constraints with this program that typically exist, such as collateral, the ability to be able to do collateral inspections, personal guarantors. So with the PPP, we should wholeheartedly be able to inject some capital into tribally owned enterprises that maybe we have had some significant hurdles before. One of the hurdles that keeps coming up is the sovereign immunity. And I'll send this to you, Terry, but I sent it to Brenda Mead yesterday. And it has to do with our regular 7A program. And I'm gonna pull it up here just so I can just touch on it. So, you know, typically our businesses that are owned by municipalities would not be eligible. However, as you know, we have loosened that up with the PPP. So in a small business which is owned in whole or in part by a state or federally recognized Native American tribe, you're eligible for SBA lending. And as long as it meets a couple parameters. And in this case, some of that has even been removed somewhat. But what hasn't been in the CARES Act specifically described is how it addresses sovereign immunity. But in our regular 7A program, we describe for federally recognized tribes that you can waive the sovereign immunity with respect to collateral pledged for the loan, the collection of the loan from the applicant, or agrees to be a sue or be sued clause that names the U.S. federal courts as the courts of competent jurisdiction. So I want to really address that, where it applies to the PPP. PPP loans do not have collateral. Also, this is a 100% guaranteed loan by the federal government, SBA. So as long as 75% of that loan is used for payroll, that's going to be a forgiven loan. And working with the banks, what we're trying to do is kind of have them understand that there are some nuances that would not require the tribe to waive sovereign immunity with respect to collateral pledged, or if they did, it's not going to matter. So if we could put in the loan documents that the tribe waives sovereign immunity with respect to collateral pledged, because we could then put non-applicable, because collateral is not applicable in this program. The collection of the loan from the applicant, you know, worst case scenario is that the tribe does not use the funds to pay payroll. I cannot imagine that happening, but let's just for scenario's sake that it say that it did. That's not held to the bank. So then that would be where we would still effectively work with the bank. The collection of the loan from you, that probably isn't going to happen. So if we could just kind of develop some language where we recognize that this clause for the most part doesn't apply, because we guarantee 100%, not 80%, not 75%, but we're covering 100%, and there is no collateral, there's no personal guarantees. I think with just a modification of some very minor loan clauses, we could probably do more lending in Indian country and be more effective with these PPP. Now, another thing that we've observed is the EIN. Businesses that have separate EINs are great. They're not having the same problem. If it's a holding co that you've set up with enterprises, we're able to fund those. It's the ones where maybe the EIN has many enterprises together. If that's the case, the borrowing needs to include the application for the several businesses. If it is a case where the casino and the tribe are under the tribal governance, that's where we get into a little more challenge. But I think with this, looking at what we've removed from the constraints and just modifying some minor language, I just have to think that our attorneys can work together to try to help us help you in accessing these funds. And I believe that Native American owned financial institutions understand those nuances much better than our Main Street lenders who are doing any kind of industry loan for any kind of business owner. And I know Native American Bank has done some PPP loans, but I've been unsuccessful at reaching back to them to have them help me understand what I can guide to you so that you can get your enterprises funded. But there is a lot of desire on behalf of some of lenders to work through this. And so I'm hopeful that it's something where we can figure out that way and soon.
Okay, this is in the chat box from Chairman Isle to Sean and Carrie. We have a small business under our tribe's EIN, which was an issue. Has that been changed? I'm not sure if that got answered in your comments, Carrie.
So if it's a small business and it's the only one that you're borrowing for, it's going to be eligible for PPP and you should apply. If the bank requests to have sovereign immunity waived, then we may need to look at some of the verbiage of those loan terms. And I think because we've waived collateral, we've waived personal guarantees, you know, a little give and take on both sides of this can potentially allow those enterprises to get the funding.
Thank you, Carrie and Sean, for being with us today. Are there any more questions for Carrie or Sean from SBA?
I have a quick question, and I don't know if you know the answer. How have you been getting many applications from independent tribal entrepreneurs and small businesses?
Sean, do you want me to take that?
Yeah, I know of a few, but I'd rather have
Okay.
you answer that if you could, please.
Well, you probably have more of the detail of who those borrowers are, but we are getting some. Because they're individually owned, even if they're on trust land, because we're not collecting collateral or personal guarantees, it makes it much simpler for us because there are no hurdles. There's no collection, there's no collateral to go and inspect. We're not doing appraisals. So it's much easier with the PPP to lend to individually owned tribal members.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Carrie or Sean? Okay, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
And next up, we have Chairman Ernie Stenskar from the Coeur d'Alene Tribe, who will speak to us about the Coeur d'Alene Casino opening. Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Good morning, Terry. Thank you for inviting me. And I just want to convey my sentiments to the ATNI board. I know how hard you have been working. I've been watching your meetings and getting the information that we needed out of it. So you guys are doing a good job in these difficult times. I just want to tell everyone good morning, and you want me to talk about the opening of the casino. I know we've been making the news lately, so they've been actually. We were laughing about it. They're doing our public relations for us. It's spreading the news about the opening, and our customers are coming back to us. But as probably all of us, the health and safety of our community is probably foremost in our minds when we decide to open. How can we open safely? We paid all of our employees, including our tribal government, casino employees, health employees, all during the shutdown. We shut down a week before the state of Idaho did. And so we've been carrying our employees that long, and looking at our reserves, we were getting really low. As you all know, the money that we receive from those casino dollars go into all of our social funds, our programs. Just you know, we're so dependent on them for our livelihood. So we were looking at the illnesses, and we were looking at our economics, and having to make that hard decision. We established a team that would advise us, made up of physicians from Raymond Health, our local health stern. But anyway, there's a doctor on there, and some of the staff from Raymond Health are on, as well as some of our directors, our attorneys, et cetera. So we have a good advisory board that advises, and we went through the protocols. How can we open in a good, healthful way that would be have the safety of our clients and safety for our people foremost. And we did. We looked at CDC guidelines. We've been inconsistent with them. We're requiring all of our clients to wear face masks, as well as our employees as they come through the doors. We have I think there was Raymond Health allowed, and maybe did some teaching to the staff, but they're taking temperatures and as people come through the doors. I haven't been over there yet. I don't play that much anyway, so I'm not a casino person. To see if everything's been followed through, but consistent with CDC guidelines, and probably ours are more stringent, I think. We have been slowly, carefully beginning to get back to business. And health and sanitation measures at the casino will include physical distancing, aggressive cleaning guidelines, and mandatory face covering protocols, protect the health and safety of our patrons and employees. We have physical and social distances, including but not limited to reduced and distant seating at all restaurants and lounges. Bingo and every other gaming machine is turned off to ensure physical space between people. I might say our buffet is closed, and we don't know that well when we'll open that. But also, plexiglass shields are placed in closed contact areas. Revenues from the casino provide funding for critical services on the reservation. I think I said that already. But I guess the situation is fluid, and we're monitoring it. They closed down, I think, at 3 o'clock in the morning and open again at 7 for intense cleaning. We have signage throughout the casino, on every entry door and throughout the casino, promoting social distancing and washing of hands. Hygiene stations are set up, everything is, I guess, around there. So I don't know what else. Maybe it'd be easier for me just to take questions.
Thank you, Ernie. Does anyone have questions for Ernie?
Good. I might add, before we open, we send a letter to the governor, telling him I guess that we were going to open, and we haven't had any response back from the state. We also notified the other tribes in Idaho that we were opening, and talked to them in a long, lengthy meeting about it. And I think they're getting ready to open probably around the 1st of May. So I think some of the other casinos are going to open. And Washington on this side of the state is very interested. We did our team looked at the neighboring counties, our marketing area, including Spokane County, Ferry County, Okanagan County, Whitman County in Washington, and northern Idaho. And we looked at all the counties and looked at the cases that were active in there and how they were doing, and that was part of the decision making. So we shared that with the tribes as we talked about it. And as you probably know, within the reservation, there's no cases in Bedma County. I think Kootenai County has some, but they're all at home, the ones that are recorded. It's looking good, in at least in our part of the area. So people are jumping at the guns. We just needed to open. So I'm prepared for any questions.
Okay, Chairman Isle from Cowlitz has a question, Ernie. How long was the line outside the doors on opening?
As I said earlier, I wasn't there. I heard that there was a line that people were waiting. I don't know how long it was.
Okay, somebody on this call was in that line. Admit it. How long was it? Terry? No.
I talking to our CFO this morning, our attorney Tyrell was on board, and he was telling me that he was talking to a CFO, and CFO said that it was like a Monday. The opening was like when you open the doors on a Monday, a regular. He said that was kind of the crowd that came in. So we had a crowd, but it wasn't overwhelming. And last night, one of our councilmen whose wife works over there said that there was a pretty good sized crowd that was there last night. Some people aren't complying, running into those, they're pulling their masks down. We have security trying to enforce. We're viewing the tapes every day. I think casino directors doing them and trying to make sure. I guess they're just policing the employees as well as the clients that come in.
Okay, from Coquille Indian Tribal Council, their question is, do you have a plan if an outbreak happens?
Yes, we do. Want to speak that, Terrell?
Sure. That situation is fluid, so our plan, if an outbreak occurs, is going to be tailored to the nature of an outbreak, whether it's a single isolated incident or if it's one employee that we can isolate. And so we've got a plan tailored to the various types of situations that might occur. But we're taking temperatures of not only all the employees before they start shifts, but every patron that comes in the door, and maintaining mandatory social distancing in the facility as well as face covering at all times. So our social distancing requirements are actually a lot more stringent than even the CDC guidelines, which is one of the ways that we believe we're going to be able to keep employees and patrons safe when they're in the facility.
Terry?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Ernie, one, thank you for your service and thank you for all the work you did with ATNI and supporting us. Can you or staff talk a little bit about how the taking temperatures, that protocol procedure?
Boy, I don't take temperatures there. I just, when it's hot, I'm ready to go.
Okay. Sounds good.
Go ahead, Tyrell.
I'm sure I can follow that. So we've procured a number of thermometers that are the contact thermometers that you might see at various facilities. And actually, one of the things that we've been able to do is work in close partnership with Mareeman Health, the clinic here. And so they actually they've been good enough to send some of their staff down. So we've got actual medical staff from the clinic that are at the entrances to the facility. And as patrons come in, they're taking their temperatures with those contact thermometers, the ones that they wave across your forehead as they come in the door. And we've also done trainings with the staff at the casino and security staff, everybody that's out on the floor, to be aware of signs of flu-like symptoms, coughing, anything like that. And so if people have a temperature, they're not allowed to come in. If they're unwilling or they don't have face covering, unfortunately they're not able to come in the door. And so we do that very rigorously, again, for the patrons and the employees. And when employees come in on shift and they clock in, they get their temperature taken as well.
Oh. Mel, do you have anything more?
Well, I just want to say thank you for enlightening us how it's working for you. It's been a interesting point of discussion for the tribes in Washington as we look each individually or collectively develop protocols to reopen, and that seems to be a very interesting point. How do you not do temperatures? So thank you for enlightening us on how you're all doing it.
You're welcome, Mel.
Okay, and from Taylor, are restaurants open, and if so, how is that being handled?
We have limited restaurants, and it's for takeout. So that's all I can say.
And from Bill Isle, does the medical staff on the floor include nurses?
Yes. Why, yes.
I know we're running behind here, but really quickly, and Ernie, I know you guys are very engaged in your political relationships with local government and the state. Did your state have a shutdown or any guidance? And how did that play out when your decision making on opening?
Our governor, well, the governor recognizes the sovereignty of the 5 Idaho tribes. So we have weekly meetings with him over the phone, just like we're doing. And so they have a shutdown. He shut down, and we mentioned earlier that we shut down a week before, probably more stringent rules than he did. We notified him before we were opening, and as a matter of fact, we have a call, I think tomorrow, right? Or this afternoon at 3 with the governor again. So we don't know if he's going to mention the shutdown or not. But if he does, fine. If he doesn't, that's fine also. We're just ready to stand by our decision, irregardless of what he's saying. This is a sovereign decision made by a sovereign government. Talking to local officials, especially the Coeur d'Alene city, we have a member that sits on the Chamber of Commerce. They're straining at the gate to open. As a matter of fact, some of the businesses are opening there. They've been really optimistic and supportive of the tribal opening. So we're getting a lot of political support from at least from Northern Idaho in terms of opening. We try to do it in a good way, letting everybody know, doing our I guess our dual diligence. Thank you for that. I was looking for that word, but we just if there's any negativity, that's fine. If people don't want to come, they should stay home, and I'm staying home. I'm in that high risk group. I'm not going to the casino, and I tell people, please, if you have elders that are high risk, keep them home. But for the rest of us that like to gamble, please go and put on your gloves and your mask and get over there and win some money.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ernie. It was really charitable of you to get on the call and kind of share your experience, because this is a hot topic right now, and we're right in the thick of it here in Washington. So
we understand that, and we've always been ATNI has been a big part of the Coeur d'Alene tribe, and we're all a family here in the Northwest, and so any questions that you may have or that may come up, please feel free to call.
Thanks, Ernie.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the good job that you guys are doing. God bless.
And Ernie, we'll wrap up with one final comment from Bill Isle, again from Cowlitz. He says, stay safe, Ernie. Go Paulette.
Lemlem, hem tits magwitch oh.
Let's see him.
Okay, moving on.
Okay, for our state updates today, we have two representatives with us. We'll be hearing what's going on in Alaska from Catherine Edwards from Tlingit Haida. Catherine is the 6th vice president there. And we also have with us today Chairwoman Brenda Mead from the Coquille tribe. So if we can start with Alaska. Catherine, you want to go ahead?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
You sure you want to start with Alaska?
Yes. That's what Mel would like. Mel would like you to start with Alaska.
Start with Alaska, looking for the Bristol Bay report.
Oh, the Bristol, well, I don't have the Bristol Bay report. I do work for Chehalis, though.
Oh, is it Chehalis or Chehalis?
Well, Chehalis is the way they say it, so. Anyway, I don't know. I'll update you on what I know, and mostly I know about the Southeast region, but you know, total cases. Yesterday in Alaska, we had 6 new cases for a total of 351 cases in Alaska with 37 hospitalizations. 228 people have recovered, and we've had a total of 9 deaths so far. The other thing that's interesting for Tlingit and Haida is that some of the, we're like United States, we have some territories. So California being one of them, and California has 46,000 confirmed cases and 1,800 deaths. Washington with their 13,000 cases and 765 deaths. Some of our tribe's cases are in Washington, up in Bellingham by Lummi. Some of them are our tribal citizens, and we're not keeping these counts based on tribal citizens. For us, for the tribe, I'll talk about this stuff first. So for the tribe, a lot of the early stuff early on was, you've all heard how it's not easy to get in and out of Alaska, and especially in our 22 communities in Southeast Alaska. And you're getting in by plane or by boat, and there's only 1 hospital, 2 hospitals, and then everybody gets medevaced either to Anchorage or to Seattle. So with Washington's cases were rising at the time, Tlingit and Haida, the tribe itself, was smart and shut down everything, and everybody's working from home at least 2 weeks before Governor Dunleavy decided that it was time to close the state. So it seems to be working for us. Some of our communities that we're worried about is Craig and Prince of Wales Island, where we had 2 cases. Petersburg, for some reason, their cases seem to be on the rise. They went from 2 to now having 4. Ketchikan has been holding steady at 3, and Sitka has had a new case. These are concerning because these are places that people would have to, if they got really sick, they wouldn't have access to the needed health care that they have. The other concern was the testing. That's kind of what I have for that part of an update. We put out stuff to our members every day, updates and resources and stuff that they can use. We have a team that we've put together that does much like what you guys do, working with elders, working with people who may need extra assistance and figuring out how to do that, just coming up with emergency management plans. Other things that are challenging for us is internet and access to the internet. In a lot of these communities, like in other tribal communities, there's access. We have difficulties to that type of access. And the CARES Act, it's a big discussion going on at home. um, about whether Alaska Native corporations are entitled to CARES Act funding or not. And Clinton and Haida has not come out with an official opinion. We each have some very strong independent opinions. And I will say this, though. We fight with those ANCSA corporations for some of the same reasons you guys are now fighting with them and reminding them that they are not tribes. So, but that it's not, we don't have an official, as the tribe, we don't have an official opinion because we have to work with a lot of those people still. Congratulations.
Terry?
Mel?
One, thank you, Kathy. My understanding is out at Annette Island, there's a casino out there. Do you know if it's open and if they're taking any precautions?
You know, Mel, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out. We have a meeting right after this, and I'll ask that question, and I'll get back to Terry and let her know.
Right, I heard they had the loosest slots in Alaska, so I was.
The only slots in Alaska.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Catherine?
Yes.
This is Jeannie. You mentioned that a number of individuals that recovered. What was that number?
For the whole state, the total recovered is 228.
Okay. Do you have it broken down into just your individuals, tribal members?
We don't, and that's one of the things that that we're looking at as a tribe. You know, this stuff, we weren't thinking about gathering this type of data and keeping track of it, but now we understand the needs for doing so. So we're building up our systems as we're going.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Mel, you have one more thing?
One last one. It's kind of a sensitive question, I know. Thank you, Catherine, for sharing the sensitivity of ANCs and the tribal governments challenges that everybody's facing up north there. As a matter of fact, I know most of the Sea Alaska board, and I have not called them just because I did not want to engage in certain conversations. But just maybe a little intel, there's not been a real pushback on the recent decision. Do you sense there may be a pushback somewhere along the ways?
I think it depends on who you're listening to. And unfortunately for you, you haven't talked to some people in Sea Alaska. We don't have the same we don't have the same luck. Some of us have to talk to them anyway, but there is a lot. Well, there's a lot of confusion in the state and amongst citizens anyway. There is a lot of publicity in Alaskan people right now saying that the lower 48 tribes are saying that are taking all the money and that there's no money for that. You're leaving Alaska Natives out. They're thinking that if the ANCs don't get any money, then the tribes in Alaska aren't going to get any money either. So there's a lot of miscommunication. They don't understand what money is for in the first place. And then the thing that always comes back that I always get hit with is, well, they're getting money for their casinos. If you guys could tell me how to answer that question, that would really.
Okay, well, let's end with that. And otherwise, we'll be here all day.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
We'll just let NCI sort it all out there. That's what we'll do. Sorry. Okay, we're going to move on. Terry.
Next, we'll hear from Chairwoman Brenda Mead from the Coquille Tribe. In addition to being the chair at the tribe, Brenda also chairs the Oregon Commission on Indian Services. Brenda?
Isla, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Well, again, Daisla, greetings, friends, and thank you for the invitation to just come and chat about what's happening for the Oregon tribes. We have been looking at the numbers too over the weekend for Oregon, and I think our official total cases is 2,354, and the death toll is now 92 for Oregon. We have all the Oregon tribes have really been working well together and communicating well, I have to say. For Coquille, we declared an emergency March 18th, like many of the other tribes, and closed down everything except essential services. So our clinic's open, direct services for our tribal membership, but the tribes in Oregon did close casinos and businesses and operations. I always want to talk about the importance of the Oregon tribes to the state of Oregon. The 9 federally recognized tribes are the infrastructure for rural Oregon. And with the 9 tribes being the largest or second largest employers in the counties that we do business in. And so we have been getting together and just talking about those things that we have in common. We also have been meeting weekly with the governor of the state, Kate Brown, as well. To keep those communications open is important. And it's always good for us if we are able to speak with one voice. But the truth is we are 9 sovereign nations, and it almost feels a little weird for me to talk on behalf of any of the other tribes today. But I'm going to stay at the level of just letting you know what's going on with the state. I think there's still a lot of frustrations with trying to get supplies and tests, but I think things are getting better for most of the tribes. I don't know that we've hit our capacity of what many of the tribes feel they need as far as the PPEs, and still looking for more testing capacity. We are also looking for just infrastructure with lab capacity and things like that. Our governor has challenged us to think about things for a reopening framework, and her challenge has been to see a reduction in cases. She wants additional PPEs in place and ramping up testing capacity, contact tracing in place, quarantine isolation for positive patients in place. But the truth is that there's no clear information about what each of those mean. And I think the tribes are really trying to get a grasp on ramping up testing capacity. What does that mean if there's no, state funds coming to the counties, because the COVID relief funds were to the state's description are very specific to 500,000 population or more, which is Portland, and also to the 2 counties that have the capacity of population, which is Multnomah County, and I believe it's, I won't say because I'm not positive. There were 2 counties though. I know that right now there's not a lot of state funds coming to rural Oregon. There is not a lot of federal funding coming to rural Oregon and the tribes. There has been some dollars from IHS, but significant for one purpose. That I believe the tribes are all in the same position as far as we support our communities with healthcare, education, elder care. The tribes are spending, for Coquille, the tribes are spending money at our local community colleges, our doctor's office, our dentist offices, and when the Coquille tribe has to ramp down and furlough many of their employees, it affects this. It's a ripple effect for Oregon. I am happy that we are still discussing with our governor reopening strategies. I think, of course, the tribes are sovereign nations. The governor recognizes that, and the tribes will make decisions for themselves on how to reopen in the best way possible. I think we all kind of nod that it's important that we do keep communications open, and that's just for future work as well. But I do think we have another I guess, strategy is legislative fixes with our state, because there is issues with the state not putting the tribes in a place that those federal funds are going to trickle down to the tribes. So we got some work to do here, but I think the tribes are working good together. We appreciate ATNI and the possibility of having a larger voice. So again, we appreciate everyone's work that you all are doing, and just I guess I would just take some questions if you have any.
Any questions
Leonard.
for?
Yeah, Leonard, do you have a feel for what the trend is in Oregon as far as casino reopening? We've heard from Idaho that one tribe has gone forward, and I don't know if you can answer that question or if it's still speculative, but any thoughts you have would be great.
You know, I can't speak for the other tribes. I know that there's been great participation with the state in talking about what those benchmarks are going to be for the reopening strategy. I think we're all feeling pressure and urgency to try to figure out the best way possible to open up in the safest manner. And I think that for Coquille Tribe, we're just looking for balance. You know, there's a need for revenue and employment and jobs for our folks, but there's also the health and wellness of our community. For Coos County, where we're at, you know, we didn't have a case until a couple weeks ago, and now we have 15. So they're isolated, and I believe that they're doing a really good job of contact tracing and isolating those patients. But you know, it's a tough decision for all tribal leaders. I know that people are struggling with just trying to find that balance. And I appreciated that Coeur d'Alene was on the phone to talk about those things. You know, we're all thinking about those things and what we can do. I know folks here are stir crazy and they're wanting to know when they can get out, but we got to do it in the best way possible. I think we're just looking to ATNI as well to see what the trends are and what folks are thinking about. If there's anything new. I don't know if I answered your question.
Thank you. I know it's a difficult decision with a lot of moving parts, so we appreciate your leadership.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chairwoman Mead? Well, thank you for being with us today, Brenda. We hope you can join us again. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, and the next up, we have a representative from NOAA with us, Emily Wilson. Emily, are you on the phone or are you on the call?
Yes, hello, good morning. This is Emily Wilson with NOAA Fisheries. Thank you for inviting me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. I appreciate the invitation to join you for the ATNI CARES Act update. I know this is the first time NOAA's been on here, so thank you. I apologize that I can't see all your lovely faces this morning. Unfortunately, NOAA employees have been restricted from using Zoom. It's a wonderful meeting web platform that we first launched a few weeks back, and now due to security issues, we're not able to participate other than by phone for external meetings. So I'm sorry I can't see your lovely faces, and I apologize that you're not able to see me, but greetings, my tribal partners, and thank you again for the invite. As many of you are aware, federal bureaus are working hard to operationalize these new funds based on the CARES Act packages that have been signed by President Trump. And NOAA Fisheries did receive $300 million in one of the earlier packages to support subsistence harvest, commercial fishing, that also included charter fishing, seafood processing, and marine aquaculture sectors for each of the states, all of the tribes and territories that are impacted by COVID-19. And so keep in mind this $300 million covers the entire nation. And NOAA Fisheries understands the urgent need to get these funds out, and our overriding goal is to distribute the assistance as quickly as possible. So we're working daily with our department, our federal partners, and any direction that's provided by Congress to help finalize a process to expedite the distribution of these funds. So in March, late March, we sent out a request for fisheries information from all of our tribal partners within the West Coast region, which covers the states of Washington, Idaho, Oregon, and California. My life has been a flurry of emails, conference calls, and virtual meetings with all of the 151 federally recognized tribes in our West Coast region since then. But we really wanted to make sure that the tribes had the information they needed to respond to our request. So on April 3rd, we provided a fisheries information template to help assist the tribes in filling out all of their information regarding commercial, ceremonial, and subsistence fisheries. And we also extended the deadline for those fishery data submissions to April 10th. And even though that deadline has come and gone, we're still remaining flexible to receive. We actually received an Alaska submission this week from Metlakatla. So we are staying open and flexible in receiving fisheries information even beyond that deadline. We understand that many tribal governments are closed. You have the same challenges that we do trying to keep business open and governments running through employees that are teleworking. So regardless of that, we're trying to maintain that flexibility so we can still obtain that information from you. We're using that information. I just want to thank the tribes who have submitted their fisheries revenue loss information thus far, because it really has informed our leadership in DC on how to allocate those funds, where the needs are, and then how to put together future packages moving forward to provide aid. So thank you so much for that. I have a copy of that template if there are tribes that are interested in providing their fisheries revenue information. And I heard this week that our decision makers in Silver Springs for our National Marine Fisheries Service have worked out a way to allocate that money, and we should have a rollout plan in place soon. So I'm hoping that by Friday I'll have a little bit more information to share with you on what that process looks like and how you can make sure that we get those funds out to those tribal communities. I really do not want to have any of our tribal communities miss out on this opportunity for fun. So I'm ready to entertain any questions at this time, knowing that we're quite far off on our agenda. So I'll end there and entertain any questions that the tribes might have. Thank you.
Any questions for Emily?
Thank you for your effort. I know NOAA's done a good outreach to the tribes, and we appreciate that. And look forward to the more information as it comes out.
Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a question. This is Sharon Gowdy from Yakima. The statistics are the template information you're asking for is from tribes. How does NOAA and SBA or any other entity coordinate with individual entrepreneur fishers? How about individual fisher people? Is there assistance available for them during the states of emergency?
Sure. So are you talking about individual fishers within the tribal communities or
Yes.
river people that are not necessarily part of the tribe?
I'm talking about individual fishers that do that for not only subsistence, but for commercial purposes.
Sure. Yeah, they're looking into allocation of those funds that would go directly through the tribes, and those fishers then it would most likely be similar to other processes that you've seen where the tribes will work with those individual fishers to determine if they meet the criteria, and then an application and a spending plan will be put in place for those funds to be distributed to the individual fishers. So that would be, those decisions would be made on the part of the tribe.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Emily? Well, thank you for being with us today, Emily. We'll keep in touch and possibly bring you back later, if that's okay. I mean, on
That
one
sounds
of our.
wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Next, we have the ever succinct, always succinct, Kevin Alice from NCAI. Thanks for being with us, Kevin.
Thanks. Good to see everybody again. I'll be quick because I know we're running late, but a couple of things NCAI is doing. First, let me make a comment on the litigation. The litigation has nothing to do with gaming or any particular type of business. It has to do with what is a tribal government and what is not, and so, NCAI, our position, we focus on protecting tribal governments, and it's really just a deflection to talk about gaming. Only less than half the tribes in the country have gaming facilities. Only like 242 of them, and a lot of those gaming facilities. I did run NACA. I'm very familiar with the Alaska Native corporations. Many of those gaming operations are a fraction of the size of some of those federal contracting operations up in Alaska. But we're always supportive of assisting our Alaska Natives, and we would be, happy to work with them on funding sources. But when it comes to funds that have been directed towards federally recognized tribes and tribal governments, that's where we have to draw the line and say, there's Indian tribes and then there's corporations. But so we, to segue off of that, we sent a letter to Treasury. We worked on getting a bunch of organizations together. It was announced on the NFOA call. ATNI, of course, was an important partner in this. We sent a letter to Treasury yesterday telling them, look, compelling case in the district court in DC, just release all the money to the tribes. Let's do that quickly. Tribes need the money. Let's move on past this. Treasury has not made, I've been monitoring it for the last 2 days, the website. They have not released any information yet on what the methodology is going to be, on how that disbursement goes. As you know from the court case, tribes can get their money. They have to withhold. They absolutely are enjoined and not allowed and prohibited from issuing money to corporations. Why did the judge, do that? My sense is that he's walking a tightrope to entertain, perhaps, some notion that to address how the corporations do interact with the tribes. And during the hearing, he did reference that it would seem very inequitable for the corporations to get a large amount of money given the smaller interaction they actually have directly with the tribes and the tribal governments. So maybe giving Treasury an option to address that. Who knows? There is a status report that's going to come out on Friday. The judge issued a minute order yesterday, so he wants to know what everybody's doing. He's going to want to know what Treasury's doing with respect to pushing out the money. So if Treasury doesn't announce something before Friday, Friday we'll get a glimpse in their filing on where they stand with that. We also, as an organization, will be working. We put out 2 letters with comprehensive asks for COVID Bill 4 that came out of our work groups. 2 of them, tribal governance and housing, and that work group produced a final ask for COVID 4. You can find that on our website. That was sent to the Hill last week. And then also the Indian Country asked for healthcare, nutrition, and education were floated up to the Hill last week as well. Economic development and employment, we should have that completed today. At some point, around 2 o'clock was the time frame. We'll circulate that amongst the group participants that worked on that, make sure we're good with it, and the goal is to get that out by 5 p.m. today. A number of congressional offices on both sides of the Hill have been asking us for that information as they start to get their head around what's going to be in the COVID COVID-4 bill. Just some information that we're going to start making a little more public. Yvette's done a really good job briefing us daily on some of the numbers and statistics of the pandemic with respect to national in focus and also with Indian country. We were talking about how we can do that weekly, put it up on our website so people can kind of see those graphs and charts and all the things that she's done a great job with some interesting stats that I've picked out. You know, we've heard, and we do have a great concern with our elders and the health care of our, you know, and making sure elders are safe. We're seeing that 2/3 of the cases in Indian country are between the ages of 18 and 44. And which is a surprising number, a smaller percentage with folks older than that. So it tells you a couple things, right? That our younger folks are not immune from this disease. Probably no younger population anywhere in the country is immune from this disease. And it kind of gives us a snapshot of what's going on out there, what we should be looking for, and really how much impact the lack of healthcare funding over decades, what that's resulted in, where, we have younger people that have health disparities that cause them to, pick up this disease, where maybe other communities outside of Indian country, you might not see that. So it's a very interesting number. Yvette's also, we wanted to kind of take a temperature of what our members, well, not only our members, we have a comprehensive list of every single, Indian tribe in the country, contact information, who they're there. And we've had a team of 4 people on the phone, 8 hours a day, talking to them and finding out, what kinds of things are they experiencing. And Yvette has done a great job putting this together. The key challenge areas, we've identified 2, 4, 7 of those. The things that under economic development and employment that are most challenging, and then each of these are broken into 6 or 7 different groups. Health disease management, critical care services, and then general tribal governments. Key needs, what do tribes need right now? Resources and assets around health disease management, critical services again, and tribal governance. And again, those are broken down. I could go on for an hour about this, but these are just high level. And what strategies are tribes implementing? Travel limitations was number 1. What tribes are doing to safeguard their communities was number 1. Tribal governance was number 2. And health disease management was number 3. So it gives us information that allows us to craft messaging stories with our advocacy. It also gives us an idea what to expect on funding. So we are going live with a mini grant program. We're going to have probably, it looks like, at least $250,000 in available in the next week that we'll be able to push out in small grants between $2,500 and $15,000 to tribes that need an injection of money very quick in a particular area. And we had an existing emergency aid a grant program that we propped up a few months ago. So we just kind of tweaked it a little bit, turned the dials, and the infrastructure's there. So we'll have this up and running really quick, and it'll allow us to help tribal communities across the country address, smaller things until the bigger funding comes in from the federal government. What are we seeing in COVID-4? Brian's done a great job with us. He's been a very integral part of our working group, especially around in the working group economic development and employment. He kind of touched on this. Tribal government relief funding in COVID-4 We expect it, but that whole government funding thing has become very politicized in the last, week, from the majority leader talking about, well, this is not a bailout program, to, the president talking about, well, sanctuary cities, states, states have sanctuary cities. Maybe we shouldn't give them any funding, or, so it's become very political. We'll see how this all plays out, but we expect that there will be some level of funding for governments and tribal governments moving forward. We are working very closely on both sides on the Hill on what the definition will be for Indian tribes and tribal government. So there's no confusion on that. Doesn't need to cause unnecessary heartburn. There's going to, if it's going to be a couple $1 trillion package again, there'll be enough money to go around, and tribal organizations that aren't tribal governments will be able to tap certain sources of fund, and there won't be any confusion about what government relief funds will be. So we don't want to walk down that path, because nobody's a winner in that fight. It's just it's a big, messy, ugly battle. And we don't want to see that again, and we don't want to be a part of that. And I don't think any part of Indian country wants to be a part of that. So we just got to make sure that these funds get to tribal governments to help their communities stay safe. So I think in 5 minutes or less, that's basically it.
Mel.
Yep. Kevin, thank you ever so much for being with us every time we meet and sharing with us information. And thank you for rallying Indian country to be amicus brief to the lawsuit. I look at that as I remember we talked about the legal strategy, which is a lawsuit, and then the political strategy. And that, to me, that was galvanizing all the tribes to be a united front and such. So we do have, as the judge declared, a victory, but is there, from your intel sources, any pushback from the ANCs? I just can't believe that they're just going to accept this and walk away.
Well, Mel, to be perfectly honest with you, my sense is that there's something going on. Okay, I mean, This was all going on
before,
outside of behind the curtain, before it showed its ugly head that Friday evening. So, which is the problem. People are all mad at us. That some of the executives for the ANCs were, that we're cutting them out. We're doing all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, you never included us in your conversations. What did you expect to happen? Okay, and NCAI has been, they even in the pre-hearing conference with the judge, the attorney representing the ANVCA and the ANCSA CO Association even mentioned our name, that we're, kind of spreading this, effort to get the ANCs out of being eligible for these funds. And it's like, really, I mean, we are all about tribal governments. That is our mandate. That's what we were put together for. It was our responsibility, and our board understood that and got behind that, understand that we have to do, that's what we're here for. Okay. And if we, no apologies about doing whatever we can to protect all 574 tribal governments, including 229 of them in Alaska. And it's unfortunate that I am talking to many of the tribal leaders in Alaska. They are nervous because of the, they're afraid of these corporations, right? We heard it on the call earlier, and they're afraid of them. And it's very unfortunate. And they're being fed some disingenuous information that they're going to be left out if the corps don't get the money. And that was the point of our letter in Treasury was, no, they won't. There's 229, tribal governments in Alaska that will partake, in the distribution of these funds, and it's available for community members. And so, we're going to continue to do that. But back to your question, Mel, I know these folks, these folks, they're not just sitting there doing nothing. Okay. Right. Their power to do something's limited because they weren't really a party in the case. They were just in a Mickey, just like we were. And they have no, it's going to be up to Treasury. And that's, they've got to go on those coattails, whether they do something after that, they can dig a hole bigger if they want to. I mean, the conversation should be, okay, we dealt with this. It is what it is. Okay. How do we move together trying to figure this out where we don't get in this situation again, instead of trying to beat a dead horse? That's,
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions for Kevin?
Kevin, you already kind of answered this, but just that you see some potential action in Congress in this next COVID package to maybe get language. It would be nice to get some language that, would fix some of the challenges we face with the CARES Act money.
Yeah, I mean, the legal flaw on the other side of this was to not understand that the Self-Determination Act definition has to be read alongside the Federalist Act definition, that one is a product of the other and they're not mutually exclusive. They're actually, wedded together. And so we were just vetting through some language yesterday with committee staffers on the Hill that focuses really on the Federalist Act definition. If you want us to go there, that's where we'll go. Okay, and these are the recognized tribal governments, and we're just crafting in a way that is again, we're not trying to eliminate anybody. We're just trying to make it clear that if Congress intends to fund governments, tribal governments, like they did in the CARES Act, that everybody doesn't get their all gets all crazy on.
Yeah, Kevin, what about funding eligibility for the money? What kind of expenses it would be eligible for? Because we've gotten guidance. That might be a hard hill to climb, and I don't know if it's the best approach, but I was thinking that we might be able to get a little bit broader opportunities to use those resources to address the impacts.
So Leonard, Chairman, the lawyer in me, when I read it, okay, is 100% expenditure focused, all right? And then the guidance from Treasury has made it clear that it can't be used to replace lost revenues, okay? And we already know it can't be used to per cap the money out to tribal citizens. And so some of the examples that I've used when talking with Chairman Frazier and President Bear Runner and some of the Chairman Wright in the Great Plains is, if you spend money that's in response to this, okay, you're good. And some of the things that you should be considering are some of the things that you've been trying to get fixed in a while, which seems to me to be obvious. I mean, if your roads are in disrepair and they go to particular communities, spend money to fix the roads, because you need rescue equipment and law enforcement, police to be able to get to homes and places on your reservation that they otherwise would not have if the road wasn't fixed. Those kinds of infrastructure projects or building projects, or look, we've got to get broadband and we've got to spend money. We've got to, or broadband's here. We need the infrastructure to build because the kids aren't in school and they need to access the internet. I mean, I'm using examples of things that have been systemic problems within our reservation communities that now, instead of waiting for the federal government to pay for it, and they still need to in the future, but they'll essentially pay for it through funding that comes through here that the government then, I mean, I think that if that's what you're asking, I think that's how we have to get creative and broader and think about it in those terms and in that context. But to this point, we are hearing before this politicizing of the government relief funding kind of reared its head in the last week or so, that the administration and even Republicans were recognizing a lost revenue component that might be necessary to put into COVID-4. We'll see.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Kevin?
Terry?
Yes.
Maybe comments more so than questions. And remember, Clinton and Haida doesn't have its official position, but the ANCs, and it's not that we're necessarily afraid of them. It's they do hold some land and some money that and they do have they have the capability of paying some lobbyists when not all the tribes do. But like we said, this me for one as a tribal citizen and the one member on the, I appreciate what you guys are doing, because this takes care of this definition that we continue in ourselves in Alaska to have this battle over whether they're governments or not. Their downfall is they, like you said, they make big money elsewhere. They don't spend that money in Alaska, nor do they take care of their tribal citizens in Alaska either that are shareholders. And many of their shareholders aren't even Alaska Native anymore. Some of those corporations' shareholders are and beneficiaries of that big money that goes out to shareholders are those big churches in the lower 48 when people are giving their shares away in lieu of tithing. Not, and the other thing that concerned me, and one of the things that I was reading, is that it would have the Treasury Department deciding where the overlap between ANC shareholders and tribal citizens are. And I'm just not for one to have the federal government make those kind of decisions for us. So while it is big and explosive and feels very divisive, there are some of us who very much pushing this envelope and making that definition stricter about being that Alaska Native corporations are not tribes. So thank you for all your efforts and your work on that.
Great. Let me just make one more point, something I did leave out. We did send a letter to the Department of Interior Inspector General yesterday to initiate an immediate investigation into the breach that went out, where all the tribal information and all the entities that submitted information, the breach. Also to look into, there was a second email that followed that, a whistleblower email alleging wrongdoing by Interior and some select executives in ANCs. And also into an ethics inquiry to make sure all the officials over at Indian Affairs and Department of Interior were doing what they were supposed to do in guidelines and as promised in various hearings, confirmation hearings and things of that nature. And I think you know what I'm referencing there. That letter went yesterday, and it's filed confidentially with the Inspector General, and we got confirmation that it's there. I also did get a call from Deb Holland and Tom Cole last week. Both of them came very late at night. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are these guys calling me for? Both of them advised me that the House Oversight Committee is looking very strongly at having a hearing, an oversight hearing on the activities of Indian Affairs in its interaction with Treasury and certain individuals, and also have been in touch or not in touch, but they do know that the Inspector General is interested in knowing if there's enough interest to engage in an investigation. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, once again for being here with ATNI. It means a lot to us to have our partnership with NCI be so strong, and appreciate you leading that.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Okay, so one last thing before we go into our tribal leaders meeting, and that is we'll hear from a 2-minute report at the most from ATNI Economic Development Corporation, Amber Schultz. Go ahead, Amber.
Thanks, Terry. I'll be super quick. So we just launched our forgivable loan program a little bit more than a week ago, last Tuesday. And we've received about 20 applications, and we had our review committee meet yesterday. We're going to meet weekly. Yesterday was more of a process call, but the reason we're meeting weekly is so that we can work on trying to get dollars out into our communities as quickly as possible. One of the questions that President Forsman asked earlier was if tribes have been, or small businesses have been successful getting the PPP funds. We did ask that on our application, and out of about 20 applications, I think only one of the small businesses has received federal aid. So that's by no means an extensive survey, but I think it does give us an idea that there's a lot of small Native businesses that are being left out. So again, those funds right now are just for Oregon-based businesses. We're working on trying to find funds to be able to expand that program using this as a proof of concept. So that's pretty much all I have, but thanks for the opportunity to give a quick update.
Thank you. Okay, that's the end of our agenda. We are going to move into a tribal leaders only meeting. And so thank you for everybody who joined us today. And we will take just a moment to get the tribal leaders only going here. Okay, again, we're asking for tribal leaders only on the phone. Thank you. Okay, we have Leonard, Catherine.
Yeah, go ahead, Terry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I got to be off in 10 minutes. So we're going to have to keep it close here. I don't think we have a ton to talk about. No, this is primarily about the recusal resignation issue with Tara Sweeney. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, so have you talked to Kevin about this? I was hoping he might stay on the line, but he probably had to run.
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. Anyway, there was a request at one time for us to join NCAI in a resignation request for Tara Sweeney over her engagement with ANCs in the CARES Act funding. And so there was some talk, you know, we've kind of been going back and forth. Some tribes have been very much very adamant about the fact that she's no longer capable of doing the job. But I've been kind of thinking more on my diplomatic side that maybe, you know, we ask her to recuse herself from this, like she said she would. And if she can't recuse herself, then maybe she should resign. And I was thinking something along those lines. Not sure on the timing on this, Terry. Are you familiar with when do we have to make a decision whether we join in or not on this?
I don't think they've set a deadline yet, but just to provide a little bit of background, prior to the court case coming out and moving forward, the tribal organization, or NCAI was organizing a tribal organizations phone call, and after the breach of data, everyone was extremely upset, of course, and were looking to, there was a lot of support from around the country on asking for her resignation or her removal. And that kind of took a back seat to when the lawsuit came forward, and it was determined that it would be best to focus on the lawsuit and everything that surrounded that, rather than her removal. So now that the judge has made a decision, and for the most part, now that's come back up. So now they're addressing it again. Do people want to see her resignation or removal? And there remains a lot of support from tribal organizations nationwide. So that's just some background information.
Okay, any comments out there? I'm open-minded. Perhaps we need some more time to check in with NCAI and see where they are. Have they taken the action yet? Do we know, Terry? I don't think they have.
No, they're working with they're kind of leading the calls on that, although there's only been 1 or 2 calls regarding that, but they're kind of taking the lead on it.
Okay, Mel? Can't hear you, Mel. Is he muted, Terry?
Yeah, this is Taylor. He's on mute.
Okay, Mel, you're up now, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, as I mentioned, Kevin shared with us, there may be a House Oversight Committee hearing to look into the relationships, i.e. what was said, what was not said. Same thing with the IG, they may. When in this situation, I've seen it before when people call for resignations, they may want to have a legal foundation to make that, or they may just don't like the color socks I wore that day, and it's time to call for my resignation. I think, Leonard, your observation is let's slow this down. Let's be meticulous and forthright, as well as there is a due process here. As much as I'd like to hop on the bandwagon and call for her resignation, I don't have any real concrete data that says she did cross an ethical line. It sure feels like it, but I haven't seen anything. So I would defer to the board what decision we make if we do.
Okay, any other quick comments before we close? Yeah, Catherine.
So he did make reference to the oversight committee and some other investigations they were talking about. I'd like to see how those play out, if they actually get that, and then decide from there. Because if she did cross an ethical line, I would like to see that being very public, because she is an Alaska Native woman, and but she came from that corporate side of doing things, and yeah, we haven't been extremely happy with her since she's been in that position. So I would like to see the investigation and stuff play out versus just a letter calling for the resignation.
Okay, anybody else out there have any comments?
Hi, this is Sharon, and I know that Mel had asked me at one point about a letter from Yakima, and I clarified it to him, and I don't know if I clarified it to others, but there are members of our council, and many of you who were at NCAI witnessed our council person at that time questioning Sweeney about her involvement with Yakima's retrocession action and the information or the advice she gave to the governor. And so I know that there are members of our council that are not supporting of her, but that is a separate issue than the one that we're looking at now with the ANCs, and they have said so. So, but I agree that we should wait until if and when there's an investigation and NCAI is at the heart of it, that when they know something further, they're also the ones taking the pulse of the rest of Indian country and what the support we have to request her removal. I think recusal is kind of just an automatic, and the Department of Interior ran right to the press to support her, saying that, yes, she is doing this, and no way would she have done that, etc. And so you're fighting, ghosts. We don't know who it is that back there that's part of that action. So myself, I would rather wait until we hear what rest of Indian country is doing before we take a position solely on our own.
All right.
This
Well, I
is
think we'll go.
Jeannie. I agree
Good.
also.
Thank you, Jeannie. All right. Well, I think we've got enough feedback to hold back, find out more information, see what direction this goes. Because I think there's plenty of pressure being put on Treasury Interior right now. And hopefully they're learning some lessons here from Indian country and internalizing those. We'll see. The jury's still out on that. But okay, I wanted to go ahead and close because we're way over. And if there's no objections, we're going to go ahead and adjourn. So any last comments before we adjourn? All right, well done. Thank you for the great agenda, Terry and James and the ATNI staff, and thank you, board, for your engagement, and all the other tribal leaders. Keep up the good work, and have a great day for the rest of Wednesday, I believe it is. Okay. Reminder. All right, goodbye. Goodbye.
Hey,
Mel?
I just wanted to answer the question that Leonard posed about hitting the golf ball more than 6 feet. Well, when I first took up golf, I hit the ball, it was a hook shot. So that was my nickname, Little Hooker.
All right.
That fits.
Okay. We'll leave on that note. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jeannie.
See you, Mel.
Bye.